So welcome everybody to tonight's session. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lauren Connolly, and I'm the Scholarships Manager for the General Sir John Monash Foundation. Thank you again for being here tonight. I am joined by my colleague, Dr. Karen McConalogue. Apologies, we're both appearing right now as John Monash, so don't be confused. I will pop our details on the screen in just a second. I just wanted to let you know as well that we will be recording tonight's session, and the recording will be posted on our website, so you can refer back to it, and we'll also be distributing it through email as well for those of you who are signed up to our scholarship and application mailing list. I would hope to be able to post and distribute the video by the end of this week. It just depends how we go. So I'll just start tonight with an acknowledgement of country. So the Office of the General Sir John Monash Foundation sits on Wurundjeri country, which is also where I'm signing on from today to this webinar. And I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we're privileged to have our working base and pay my respects to the Wurundjeri elders, past, present, and emerging. And I'd also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners across the vast continent on which our scholars, supporters, board members and staff call home and where we often meet as a national organisation. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Lauren and I'm the Scholarships Manager for the Foundation. I oversee and manage the application and selection process for our scholarships. With me tonight is Dr. Karen McConalogue, our Executive Director of the John Monash Foundation Leadership Academy. Karen will be monitoring the chat throughout the session to respond to any questions that pop up. And I'll also ask her to speak a little later on about our Leadership Academy as well. So if you do have questions, just remain on mute for now, post them in the chat, but there will be an opportunity at the end of the session if you'd like to jump off mute and just have a chat and ask a question that way. So for our webinar, tonight is part one of a two-part series that we conduct each year about our scholarship and application process. In today's session, I wanted to go into further depth about the scholarship, what the benefits are, a bit more about the selection process, and what our tips are for applying as well. And as I said, you can post any questions in the chat as we go. And just a little bit of housekeeping to please keep your microphone muted at the moment, and then we'll invite you to jump off mute when we're ready. I'll also be telling you a little bit more about the second part of this webinar series at the end of tonight's session. So I'll begin with this quote from General Sir John Monash, who is the inspiration for our foundation. "The privilege of education carries great responsibilities. It is not given for individual benefit alone, but to be fit persons for the higher duties of citizenship and for roles of leadership in all fields to make Australia great." This quote really frames the way we think about the scholarship and the way we work at the foundation. So the General Sir John Monash Foundation was established over 20 years ago, and it's built on the philosophy of John Monash that the high level of education that we strive to attain is there in order to positively contribute to the country, and the qualities of John Monash inspire our scholarship selection criteria. So why apply for the scholarship? So the great thing is that it's open to applicants of any age, studying any discipline, and you can choose to go anywhere in the world. We encourage applicants to choose universities and programs that are world-leading in the discipline area that they want to study in. John Monash scholars benefit from joining a professional and international network for career opportunities, and they also receive ongoing career support and professional development through our Leadership Academy. So these are some of the benefits of our scholarship that might differ from some of the other available scholarships for postgraduate study. So the best thing about it, I think, is that you can choose to study it anywhere in the world and any university, which really allows you to consider programs and universities that are truly the best for you, your career, and your discipline area as well. The value of the scholarship is $100,000 for each year of study, up to a maximum of $300,000 over 3 years. So the length of funding is only dependent on the duration of your program. I've had a couple of questions over the past weeks about what else might influence the funding amount. It's standard. A 1-year program would be $100,000 and so on. So it's really just about course duration. You can also choose to use the scholarship to flexibly cover tuition fees, living expenses, and other related studies costs. On top of the scholarship, scholars also receive an additional travel allowance to contribute to flights to and from your study destination. And you'll also be able to join a global network of our over 280 now scholars and get the opportunity to collect with like-minded leaders through our Leadership Academy. So with that, I'm actually going to hand over to Karen to tell us a little bit more about what the Leadership Academy is.
Thanks, Lauren. We really do think this is it's a point of difference between the John Monash Scholarship and many other scholarships. While you will find that most scholarships do have an alumni program and they do host some events, our board decided several years ago that they wanted to do something very special with our scholars, and to make sure that they have the skills and access to the leadership development opportunities that they need to provide support to them in an ongoing way. So the education that you get through the scholarship is only one part of our program. The second part is the Leadership Academy. And it is open to all John Monash scholars from the moment you become a John Monash scholar all the way through to as long as you need it, or many of our older scholars are coming back and being mentors and helping in the program in other ways. So it's there from day one. It includes things like mentoring programs, as I mentioned, career guidance, special webinars and seminars, and then we have some major events during the year, which we'll cover in a minute. But we do have a very eminent advisory board that oversees this for the Leadership Academy, which is separate from the board of the foundation. And we're very proud to have the Honourable Julia Gillard AC as our patron of the Leadership Academy, and very pleased that she will be, for example, a keynote speaker at our symposium at the end of the year. Next slide, please, Lauren.
There we go.
So these are just a couple of examples of the type of leadership programs that John Monash scholars are involved in. When they come to Canberra, when they're awarded as a John Monash scholar, they come to Canberra and they're presented a certificate by the Governor General, and there's a photo there of the 2025 cohort with Her Excellency. But as well as the celebrations of the scholar, we actually have a 2-day leadership program which the brand new scholars have, which equips them with skills for when they're going out to study, which include things like conquering your saboteurs and making value-based decisions, and sort of all things about leading self, the sort of what we call foundations of leadership program. So that's a dedicated program for new scholars that runs every year. So the scholars have an opportunity to become very bonded with their own cohort through that program and through the presentation ceremony. Then every second year we hold a global symposium for our scholars, and the photo on the right there is from St John's College at the University of Sydney in 2023, which was a fantastic event. That was our biggest event, our biggest symposium to date, and of course every year we get more scholars, so we're hoping that the events get bigger. And this year, the Global Symposium will be held in Melbourne and will be hosted by the University of Melbourne. As I said, and our keynote speaker is Julia Gillard. So whoever is announced as a 2026 scholar this year will get to come to that symposium in Melbourne, and we fly scholars in from all around the world to participate in that. So just an example of some of the things you can expect through the Leadership Academy. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Karen. So moving back to the scholarship and the application now, if you are interested in applying for the scholarship, you will need to meet our minimum entry criteria, which is listed on this slide. So you will need to be an Australian citizen to be eligible for the scholarship. You will need to have already completed, or at least will complete by the end of this year, an undergraduate degree from an Australian university. You'll also need to be planning to commence your postgraduate study at some point in 2026. I've had a few questions over the past few weeks about people who have offers already for programs that start in 2025, usually September 2025, with the academic year of the Northern Hemisphere. Unfortunately, any program that starts this year is not eligible for this upcoming round of scholarships. It will need to start in 2026. If you do fall into that category and you would be able to defer your offer until next year, then we would be able to consider your application in the upcoming round. There's some additional information on the slide here about other programs that are not eligible for funding, which are some short courses or postdoc positions as well. And just a final note there too, that you're welcome to submit applications for other scholarships like Rhodes and Fulbright and Ramsay, but you can only hold one scholarship at the one time for this study. So you would not be able to pick up a Rhodes and a John Monash for the same course of study. Okay, so could you be a John Monash scholar? So the scholars demonstrate academic excellence, outstanding leadership potential, and they also have a strong vision to build Australia's capabilities for the future, which are all of those qualities that are modelled by General Sir John Monash. So to be successful in your application, you must demonstrate excellence, and that can be through academic or professional examples. You'll need to demonstrate leadership, which would be through different leadership examples in different environments, and also citizenship, which is how you plan to make a positive impact on and contribute to Australia and society more broadly. So importantly as well, you'll need to be able to argue the merits of your chosen program and university and how they're best positioned to drive progress in your field of study. So when we're talking about choosing a university or choosing a program, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the great thing about this scholarship is it does give you the opportunity to study anywhere in the world, and you'll need to justify in your application how your chosen university and program is the best fit for your future career, how it advances progress in your field, and how it will help contribute to your area of study and positively impact Australia. So you can see some examples on the screen there on the left of where our scholars have studied, some really exciting locations like University of Edinburgh, Juilliard, ETH Zurich, and on the right there, we also have partnerships with some select international universities. So if you were to complete your studies at one of those on the right, you would be eligible for additional fee discounts and bursaries on top of the scholarship. So I've just written in there what those bursaries and discounts would be depending on the university. So now if you're choosing a program, you should know, of course, how much funding you'd be eligible to receive with the scholarship. So we award 1, 2, or 3-year scholarships depending on the duration of your program. So if you were applying for a 1-year master's program, you'd be eligible to receive a 1-year scholarship, which is worth $100,000. If you chose to study a PhD program, you would receive $100,000 each year for 3 years for a total value of $300,000, which is the maximum value scholarship. So you would not be able to, for example, receive a 3-year scholarship for a program that was only 1 year in duration. I should say too that you don't need to apply or have an offer for the program before submitting your scholarship application, but we do expect you to have done some research on the admissions process, the timeline, at what time of year you need to apply, and also the eligibility requirements of the program. So you might want to reach out to the university just to check all of that as part of your preparation for the scholarship application. With master's programs, generally those eligibility requirements are advertised on the websites of the universities, but it might be a little less clear for a PhD or a DPhil, and you might need to actually contact some potential supervisors. So just think about that as part of your preparation for your scholarship application. So here we've got a brief overview of this year's selection process. So our online application portal has now opened. It opened late last week and it will close on the 30th of June at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We usually receive around 350 applications during this window, and I do really recommend that you submit the application well in advance of that 30th of June deadline. From there, we usually invite around 100 applicants to the first round of interviews. These interviews are held nationally with a panel of guests from a range of different disciplines, and they will be held over several weeks in September. After the first round of interviews is complete, we'll invite 40 applicants roughly to progress to the national interviews, which are held in October in Sydney and Melbourne. So if you're not located in Sydney and Melbourne, we will fly you to one of those locations to the interview panel. And then finally, each year between 14 and 20 extraordinary applicants become John Monash Scholars and are awarded a scholarship. So notification of that scholarship comes in early December. So as I mentioned, in order to apply, you do have to submit an online application. So in addition to answering the application questions, you'll need to prepare some documents as well. So you'll need to submit your resume, any official academic transcripts for completed study and also incomplete study that you're still in progress. You will need to nominate 3 referees in your application, and then they will need to provide letters of recommendation for you. And they can be from areas of your life, an academic area of your life, professional area of your life, or also personal referees as well are accepted. And then finally, you'll need to complete a budget plan, which we provide a template for, and that just demonstrates how you plan to manage your finances for the duration of your study. Because cost of living is creeping up, the Aussie dollar isn't performing great depending on the market that you're planning to study in. So that's the purpose of that budget plan that you're preparing, especially if you're going for 3 years, which is a really long time, that you're managing and you're prepared for how those scholarship stipends will be spent. So as applications have already opened, you can go ahead and create an application to look at the questions and the requirements in greater detail. So we do always get asked for more information about the application form or if we have any tips. So I've just included some on this slide here. So firstly, definitely read carefully. We've got application instructions. The questions are pretty thorough. We've got help text if you're unclear about how to respond. So read all the information that's available to you within the application form. I would also recommend to seek guidance. Maybe you have mentors in your life. If you're a current student or if you're an alumni, look into whether your university has a prestigious scholarships team. They are well equipped for supporting people to apply for these kinds of scholarship opportunities. So use those resources that are available to you, and also any academics as well who probably come across a similar application or opportunity. Definitely be recommending to do your research. So when you're thinking about what program to choose, I encourage you to look deeper than just the rankings of a university or the rankings of that course. Why have you chosen that university? Is there something else other than the rankings that's drawing you to that? Is it the best for your field of study? Is it in proximity to locations or research or equipment or other experts in your field who would enhance your study experience, or any of that that's not available in Australia? the people that can go into greater detail about why they've chosen a program in a university tend to get further on in the application process. I would encourage you to choose your referees carefully. So they should be the most senior people that can speak to your excellence and your leadership capabilities. I would select the most appropriate combination of academic, professional, and personal referees based on your current career stage. So if you're still at university, maybe that means more academic than professional. And if you're later on in your career stage, maybe that means more professional than academic. The only thing I don't recommend is submitting only 3 personal references. Be authentic. I would encourage you to be honest and genuine in your responses. And really allow your personality and lived experience to shine through. As the first stage of assessment is just reading through your written applications, if you can use your responses to bring to life your application to the person that is assessing it, that will go a long way to how far you get in the selection process. And finally, definitely allow plenty of time to prepare and submit your application. Take note of that deadline. Ensure your referees are contacted early and prepared, and keep on top of them completing their parts, because we really cannot accept late applications, and a lot of requests come through in those final few days before the deadline. So keep on top of that. And then as well, definitely draft and proofread your entire application in full before you submit it. So I've mentioned a few times that our applications are open, so go on in and have a look around. In a few weeks, we will be holding a second live webinar on the 4th of June. This is a dedicated Q&A session. We'll be inviting our scholars and alumni and staff as well from the foundation. The scholars will be talking in depth about their application and interview experience, and also a bit about what it's like to be a scholar and getting involved in the Leadership Academy. So we'll be welcoming questions for them, and you can submit them in advance or ask them during the session as well. If you aren't already signed up to our scholarships mailing list, you can scan that QR code on the screen. It'll ask you to register your details, and we'll notify you about the upcoming session. And we'll also send around a recording of this webinar as well to that mailing list. Okay, so now Karen and I are happy to take some questions from the audience online. But before we get to the live attendees, a few people did email us some questions in advance because they couldn't make it to the session. So I'll just start with those questions first. Karen, do you have those handy?
I do. Lauren, just give me a second. And there's a few questions I haven't got to on the chat, but I've got to quite a few of them. But some have just been directly to me. So I think we'll go through some of those as well.
Sure.
And some of the questions that have come up on the chat are about referees,
Okay.
which is one of the questions that was emailed in. And so someone on the email was asking if, in terms of a mix of personal, professional, and academics referees, is that the best thing to do, or just to provide professional references?
I suppose rather than thinking about ticking boxes of categories like professional, personal, academic, it's really about selecting, as I said, senior people that can talk to your excellence. I definitely recommend at least one professional that can talk about or a leader or a personal that can talk about your leadership capabilities and excellence. It's also good to have someone that can talk about any academic achievements that they have witnessed or supported you in. But otherwise, it's really not about ticking boxes, but about choosing references that can support and talk about you in a way that supports what you're going to write in your application to really bring that application to life for someone who is not going to get a chance to meet you before they read everything you've written. So, Karen, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, there's been a few questions on referees in the chat, and some of them I
Mm.
said were directly to me. Someone had asked what do the referees get asked, and so they get it. There's a few short questions, and then they provide a letter of reference which they upload into the portal. Another question around referees was, do we notify the referees? Well, the system does. So once you put their email address and name and details in, it will shoot out, the system will generate an email out to the referee to give them instructions on how to do the referee's report. However, you are responsible to make sure that your referees have done that by the deadline. If the referees' reports are not back, the application will be deemed ineligible. So we need to make that very clear. It is your responsibility to chase up your referees and for them to have confirmed. If there's any doubt, you can contact our office and we can check if someone's having trouble. We had one referee was having technical issues, for example, last year. We can check if it's been submitted and we can see it at our end. But please don't leave it to the last minute.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, and
another,
I'll just add as well, once the system emails your referee to say that you've been invited to give a reference, it'll give them a link to a reference part of your application and it will just step them through the process. So don't feel that you have to brief your references thoroughly about what exactly they'll be asked. Just telling them that you'd like to include them as a reference and they'll need to write a letter of reference for you is enough, and then the system will provide the rest of the instructions for you.
another one that we had emailed in, Lauren, on referees was,
Mm.
is it okay if all professional references come from the same place? Would my application be stronger if I'd had a mix of other referees?
That's a good question. And again, it's probably dependent on where you are at your career stage. I would recommend to have at least one reference that's from a different area. So that just can provide further depth to your application. Three references that talk about uh, you at one place of work are probably going to repeat similar things. So I think having at least one that is from a different area of your life that can provide information and examples about you outside of that workplace will be a strong element in your application.
Another one on referees we had on the chat was, could we give an example of a personal referee? And so I sent back saying, so it's someone that knows you personally. So workplace is obviously like your boss or a supervisor. Academic referees are people from your academic studies, like lecturers or course advisors or course leads. But a personal reference is someone that knows you in basically any other aspect of life. But it needs to be someone that can speak to your leadership, your community service. So it might be someone like, for example, you may be in a sporting team and you've worked with the same coach for a really long time. It might be that you're part of a community organisation and there's a board and there's a chair that maybe can write your reference. It might be a religious leader if you're involved in a religious organisation, but it needs to be someone that knows you well. Ideally, not just a friend, but someone in the community of standing who could write something about you and be able to cover those aspects of your skill set and your personality. Um, some other ones we've had, so emailed in, and then we've got two more, and then we'll come back to what's still left in the chat. How many degree programs can I include in my application? Is it acceptable to submit outlines of the budgets for those three options, or should I just discuss one? And I'll let you handle that bit, Lauren, and then I'll come to the rest of that question.
Okay, so two parts. The application form itself will let you nominate up to two preferences. So you're not going to be able to nominate a third if you are considering one. It really just needs to be your top two, even if you are considering other options. And then the budget template likewise also gives you two templates to complete. So a budget per course preference. You don't have to nominate a second preference if you don't want. Just your first is what we will need. However, I would say that having a second or even going deeper like this person and having third or looking into other options can only be of benefit to you, especially when you're comparing tuition fees from country to country or institution to institution. If you are considering studying in the UK or the US, you will quickly see how expensive it can be, even with a scholarship. So doing that kind of research, not only for the value of that study to you, I think that goes a long way to understanding the commitment of international study and what you need to prepare.
And I think the other part of that question was really about then, yeah, the preference order and what you get accepted into and what you end up doing. And
Mm.
so really do ensure that you're putting those courses in priority order. So the one that you really want to do needs to go at the top because you're going to give us the most information about that one because there's just not space to give all the information about all of the courses. But obviously, Lauren can come back to you at some point in the future if she needs further information. If you're not successful into the first option, for example, we may need some further information in regards to the second course. But yeah, so prioritize them. So think very carefully about what you want to do and put them in priority order because that's what you're going to effectively be writing about and budgeting for. So you'll only give us brief information on your secondary choice.
Yeah.
Another question is, does the Monash Scholarship give preference to candidates who have been in the workforce for a number of years, or is equal consideration given to those who have undertaken prior postgraduate study and are seeking to pursue a research-focused degree like an MPhil or a DPhil overseas? In other words, would a candidate who's about to complete a master's degree in Australia and is continuing their academic path be considered less favorably than someone from a more traditional mix of study or work experience?
That's a good question. I mean, maybe Karen, actually, you can take this one.
Yeah, so we genuinely are open to any study that you want to do at any stage of life. So on average, the average John Monash scholar does have 3 to 5 years work experience from between their bachelor degree and usually the postgraduate study they're doing with us, and some have another postgraduate degree as well. But that's not what we're looking for. That's just on average because we don't have an age cutoff. So that's just the way that our distribution falls. It's not something we're selecting for. So I think that's important to note. We also are looking for any postgraduate study. So we do fund 1 year's masters, 2 year masters, and we're funding PhDs, which will take you 3 to 4 years on average, depending on the university and the course. So we're not preferencing any of those. We generally, in terms of our budget, we don't really fund everyone to do a PhD because we would only fund a very few number of scholars. So we like a mix and we see a mix. And in fact, in the last 10 years, there's been a bit of a change in the applicants that we see from those mostly looking to do PhDs sort of 10 years ago to 20 years ago. More commonly now, we're seeing people asking for 1 year's masters. That's the most common thing that we're currently seeing in the application pool. But again, we select any of these. So we're not giving preference to some over the other, is what I would say on that one. Um, Anything you wanted to add on that, Lauren?
Only that we've construct our assessment criteria in a way that makes sure that someone who is fresh out of university or still finishing up can be equalized to someone who has had 3 to 5 years in the workplace, so that they're on reasonably fair footing.
I'm going to jump into some of the questions I didn't get to on the chat. So someone's asked, can I do a master's at Oxford but complete it part-time over 3 years and budget for 1.5 FTE, so 150K?
Yeah, so this scholarship is just for full-time study. We unfortunately don't support part-time study.
And just a note, most countries won't give you a student visa to study part-time. You usually need to
Mm.
be a full-time student anyway.
Yeah.
Um, I'll just keep scrolling through to see what else we've got in the chat that I didn't get to. Oh, someone said that they've heard that some universities give financial discounts to students. That is true. And someone said, does this affect your scholarship? So no, you certainly can. Some universities may offer discounts. That's fine. We encourage applicants to also look for what we call auxiliary scholarships that might provide small amounts of money that you can use as a living allowance, for example, or cover some of your tuition. What you can't do is hold the Monash with a major scholarship like the Rhodes or the Fulbright. So just to be clear on that, we're open for people finding other ways to help. As Lauren said, the cost of living and exchange rates, it's very expensive. The $100,000 sounds like a lot, but it is a contribution towards your studies. So you will, when you start doing the budget, you'll realize how expensive it can be. So we're encouraging auxiliary scholarships, look for discounts, make it work for you financially. You just can't hold our scholarship with another major one. So just see, so I'll just scroll down to find ones I haven't. Yeah, are referees required to put a letter of recommendation in the report, or are there specific questions? I think we answered that one earlier on. Someone they're auditioning for a program in the US in January, and the offers won't be made till March. There's no guarantee that the offer, guarantee of an offer. Does this make them ineligible for the scholarship?
Yeah, so this is why it's really important to have definitely a second preference, but maybe some other backup options as well. There are programs that scholars apply for that are extremely competitive, but also there's just those programs that it looks like you meet the criteria on the website, but because they're so competitive or popular, you might not end up getting an offer. It does not make you ineligible for the scholarship process or the application process, but that is why we would be interested in hearing about other research that you've done on other options so that you can still leave for study in 2026, even if you don't get into that first preference.
And quite often people don't get into their first preference. That's normal. So that no one's penalised in any way for that too. Another question on the chat, Lauren, does the scholarship selection process take into account the stage that someone is in terms of their work, education, leadership life, e.g., an undergrad student undertaking an honours degree versus someone that's been in the workforce for several years?
Yes, it does, and we try to ask questions in the application that will allow someone to answer regardless of the stage of career that they're at. So yes, we will be considering people regardless of the career stage that you've had. It's not mandatory to be able to demonstrate excellence only through years in the workforce.
Yeah, and the word I use around that, or the words I use around that, are relative to opportunities. So we expect that someone's been in the workforce for 5 years, they're going to have more of a track record to put on their CV. But we look at that as relative to someone that's been in the workforce for 5 years, and that's we don't do a direct comparison with someone doing their honours degree, if you know what I mean. So it's people are looked at where they are in their journey, not compared to each other. So relative to opportunity is the words I would use there. Would it be looked upon unfavorably if you did not have an academic reference?
No, not necessarily. Although it is just, nice to be able to offer someone who can validate any academic claims that you've made in your application, but I don't think it would be looked at unfavorably as long as you have provided 3 strong references that can speak to your excellence generally and leadership capabilities.
Yeah, I think we've had cases before where just because people have been in the workforce for a few years, they didn't feel the academic referees were current enough.
Relevant, yes.
They wanted to ask people in the current workplace environment.
Yeah.
So that's all good. What if you are still waiting on acceptance from different universities at the time of application and you're considering applying for multiple universities? I think we've kind of covered that one in terms of there's no need to have been accepted into a university, and you can apply to multiple. We just, in terms of what you put on your application, put them in priority order, as I said earlier.
Yeah, and also I would say even if the scholarship is to support study that commences in 2026, if you feel that you're a bit unsure of your eligibility of a certain program or university and you want to submit an application this year just to see how you go, I think that that's fine as long as you know that the if you get an offer and you get a scholarship, that offer will need to be deferred to start in 2026 for scholarship eligibility.
There's a question on applying for a PhD program as part of the scholarship. Do you need to supply an academic transcript for your master's and undergraduate, or just your most recent master's?
I would recommend providing transcripts for any study you have completed at a degree level.
There is space to upload them in the portal. You can list your degrees separately. Quite a few applicants do have more than one qualification, and there is space for that.
Yeah, so you can list up to four qualifications. I wouldn't recommend, like, if you've completed a short-term exchange program as part of a larger degree, like a bachelor, I wouldn't recommend taking up a full um, entry for that exchange program. I would just be keeping it at a degree level, so bachelor degree, master's degree, if that's relevant to you.
Just someone says, just wondering if priority will be given to those that do not already have a postgraduate degree from an overseas university. I completed a master's in history at the University of Edinburgh last year, but the Monash Scholarship would be amazing for a future PhD program.
No, that there would be no preference. It's really just about how each applicant argues the merit of that program that they would like to study with the scholarship.
Just on PhD eligibility, though, I'll just in many cases, to do a PhD or a DPhil, you will be required to have a master's degree or a qualification that provides prior research experience. So that would be an honours degree equivalent under the Australian system. So in Australia, you can't do a PhD unless you've done an honours degree or a master's with a research component. So just be aware of that. You can't generally jump from a straight bachelor's degree into a doctoral degree without having done a master's or some kind of research training. So do check the eligibility criteria very carefully if you're selecting a DPhil or a PhD, and it differs from university to university.
Yeah.
Someone said, I note that a lot of the application questions and points relate to the specific program. What should you do if you're applying for multiple universities, e.g., in the process of speaking to multiple academics about various PhD programs? And if you have backup programs like master's programs, for example, in short, how should I tell my referees to respond if I have multiple programs that I'm looking at?
I think when you're preparing your referees, I don't think that they have to go into too much depth about being in support of your choices of programs. It's really about who you are, although, if their support of your choice of program may be relevant, but they don't have to, go into detail about your choice other than they're supportive of you going on to take this postgraduate study. We I think it's a good thing to have a lot of options. We will ask you though to really narrow in on that top choice, because your choice is then going to be what determines how we decide how many years of funding you get. So if you're tossing up between a PhD, which means you're eligible for 3 years of funding, and a 1-year master's course, they're two very different things. They're likely to going to give you very different outcomes as well, and it would be a very different scholarship. If you're having like really multiple courses, I think it probably is best for you to start narrowing down on your top choices. And I think having a top choice is going to enable you to better argue why you have chosen that program as well.
Another question, I've been accepted into a master's program in Luxembourg. Can I apply now?
Yes, if the program is not going to be starting in 2025. So you can have an offer if it starts this year and you're able to defer it, then you'd be eligible for the scholarship. But if you are planning on taking up that offer and starting at some point this year, then we won't be able to give you a scholarship consideration for that.
And just on start dates, it's any date next year that you can start. So that's from the 1st of January right through till December. So we did have a PhD student start this year in January from the new cohort, for example. However, most people are going to the Northern Hemisphere, and most teaching periods start in the second half of the year. So that's the most common time that people are going out around the sort of August, September mark. But we don't pick anyone based on that. That's just when you're required to leave the country. Someone said, can an individual reference be submitted on behalf of a broader group of people, for example, members of a board? I don't think we've had this before. Lauren and I can maybe both give you a view on this.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't see why not. But it really would be have to be that one person is sort of taking accountability for the representation of that broader group. I'm not sure, Karen, what do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's ineligible. I think the preference would be really for an individual to be speaking about you, because I don't think realistically a group of people know you that well in terms of what we're asking them about. So it might look nice to sort of say, on behalf of the board, we write to support this application. But I think realistically, pick the best person on that board or the person that knows you the best.
Yeah,
And it doesn't matter if they're the chair or they're just a member of the committee. It doesn't matter to us. It's the fact that they know you and can speak about your qualities is what we're interested in. So
yeah,
we don't, it's not that you can't do it. I just would advise not to do it that way,
yeah.
preference. Yeah. Um, Question from Rachel. How do you assess the suitability slash attractiveness of a candidate if their chosen program is different to their past career or academic degree? For example, using the chosen program as a career pivot.
Oh, well, this we get this all the time. I mean, a great example of this, a very recent example in our 2025 cohort is Hannah Kempton. So you can look her up on our website. Her training and her education up until applying for the scholarship was in medicine. She's an interventional cardiologist. However, she will now be going to Germany to do a MBA, and that is part of a career pivot to work on developing heart valve technology, but she wanted to learn the business side of things to try and better commercialize that technology and make it more available to Australians because apparently, this is not my area, but apparently Australia is not great at what was it, trials compared to other countries. And so that is what Hannah has gone to study and what she was able to talk about throughout her application process. So if you are proposing something that's completely different to your background rather than a development on what you've already studied, that is totally fine. And it's treated the same, and it's not unusual
Right.
either.
We have lots of career pivots. What's important to tell us is why,
Yeah,
in terms of what difference is this going to make to you and what impact you want to have on the world. So that's the important part is the why. Yeah.
yeah.
And someone's asked if individuals are already based overseas working full time, will they be flown back for the first and second round interviews?
Okay, so in the first round of interviews, uh, they are each we fly to different cities in Australia and we'll do interviews over the course of a full day. In the first round, we have a whole day dedicated to virtual interviews as well. So if you are unable, if you're not around, you're not in the country, you're not able to make it to a city, you might be invited to attend on a virtual day. Otherwise, also, we are able to do Zoom interviews as well if we're physically in a city. So we would just cater to what your situation is. In the national round, the second round, we're also able to do Zoom interviews, but we are able to offer subsidies as well if you would like to fly back and do the interview in person. We may not pay for the entire flight, depending on where you are located, but subsidies are available if you'd like to join us in person for that interview.
Someone's asked, do our program dates need to be final or could this be altered after the application?
It can be altered after the application. It's just really about confirming that you are commencing in 2026. But especially at PhD programs, there might be monthly start dates rather than a regular semester one start. So if it's not final, it's not final. That's okay.
Most programs will have their admission and start dates up on their websites, though, so you can usually find that information. But as Lauren said, things like PhDs, they can start at any time.
Yeah.
What advice do you have on the budget plan? Are we to plan assuming we have been provided the funding and work from there as to how we would use the funding?
Yes. So, first step is when you know your program duration and you're preparing your budget. If your program duration is 2 years, plan as part of your budget that you have 2 years worth of scholarship or 200,000. The other thing I would say about that template is I would be entering every income or every expense for your entire duration. So if your scholarship value is 2 years, therefore 200,000. When you're entering your tuition costs, you need to enter the tuition costs for the full 2 years, not 1 year. And a lot of universities will advertise annual fees, so you just need to be careful of that. But yes, when you're preparing your budget, assume you have this scholarship at a minimum. And if you are planning on applying for some of those auxiliary scholarships that Karen was talking about earlier, budget that you have achieved those as well.
Someone else has asked around uploading transcripts. So we mentioned before there's space for more than one transcript. You will need to put on your bachelor degree from an Australian university because that's part of your eligibility. But we are recommending if you have other degrees, and we're not talking about short courses or things here, we're talking about actual degrees and awards from universities. You can upload those. But as part of that question, it says, do they need to be scanned or an electronic copy suitable? So, yeah, just a PDF version of your transcript.
Yeah,
What we're looking for.
either scanned or the online verified PDF is fine. It just has to be a document that is an official transcript from your university rather than I know that if you're still studying, you can log into your student portal and take a screenshot of your enrolled units or your grades achieved. No, we don't want that because there's no way for us to verify that. We want to see the document that says that it's an official transcript issued by your university.
And when we say transcript, we mean the one that shows your actual marks, not the
Your marks per
testament,
unit.
which is the Bachelor of certificate. That's a testament. We want to see the transcript, the one that says it shows the units that you were enrolled in and the marks or grades that you were given. Someone says, can the John Monash Scholarship fund 2 consecutive 1-year master's degrees if they form a cohesive study plan?
I'm not sure what cohesive study plan means necessarily, but I can answer this. So, more and more, what we're seeing is what we call combined degrees. So that might be 2 degrees taught across 2 different universities, but it's sort of one enrollment, one experience, or it could be 2 degrees at one university. That's again like a one enrollment. I think Oxford. The example there is they do a 1+1 program with some of their masters. There's a similar thing at Harvard. Last year, we got several applications for dual universities. So you do 1 year at an American university, 1 year at a UK university. They're okay. What's not okay is, or what we can't fund is 2 separate 1-year master's degrees. So that it's not a combined program. It's not that the universities have a partnership. It is a master of blah blah at one university and then separate a master of something else at a different university that are otherwise not joined. We don't allow funding for that, but we do allow funding for those combined degrees, and we are seeing more and more of them in the market.
Ella asks, does it make a weaker application if you only put one preference for course on the application?
No, it doesn't make for a weaker application. what I will say though is you may need to be prepared. Like if you don't know if you're eligible for that, you might be asked at interview if you have backup options, just because not everyone is guaranteed an offer to that first preference. So it doesn't make for a weaker application, but you might need to make sure that you've done some research on what some other options might be.
And it's certainly not uncommon that people need to go to the second option or even a third option because these universities that people are applying for are very hard to get into. Even if your marks are really good, you'll be surprised
Hmm.
where the bar sits on some of these. So always having a backup plan if that works for you. I mean, maybe there's only one course you want to do. It's like it's that or it's nothing.
Hmm.
But generally speaking, people have another similar course they can find that they'd be happy to go to too.
Yeah.
Um, this is in relation to the citizenship criteria. Alex asks, is there any theme to the part of where it says positive impact to Australia? Not quite sure what we mean
Theme.
by theme there, but
Um,
what are we looking for, I guess, is what we're asking for in the positive impact to Australia. Do you want me to answer that one?
yeah, I think so.
So even I'm the person that deals with impact.
Yeah.
Um, the impact can be lots of different things. So how you impact Australia, it could be that you're, the best heart surgeon in Australia, and that's your contribution. That's what you're doing for the country. It could be that you want to be in law reform. You really see there's issues with the law, and you want to change things. There's lots of different ways. There's no one theme and there's no one thing we're looking for. It's really about why you, why that degree, and then and what are you going to do with it? So there's no specific theme we're looking for, and it can be impact can be really, really big. It can be what you're doing individually. It can be what you want to do as part of a team. For example, we've got people in the space program and things like that. So that's obviously you're going to be a contributor in a team to a greater, bigger thing of impact, but you'll individually be having your own impact. So yeah, I'd say don't overthink that. We're not looking for anything specifically. It's basically what's your dream? What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? How will this degree help you get there and give you the skills and knowledge that you need to do that? So
And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
if you're from a discipline like maybe a classicist, or you're planning on doing pure research that maybe doesn't translate to career like being, the best heart surgeon in Australia, it's then sort of asking yourself, um, in undertaking this research, what's the scholarly value of this research being conducted? That's the impact. It's a different kind of impact, but that is the impact of that different type of research, as opposed to something that translates directly back into a career.
I will just note that we're sort of 2 minutes to 7 o'clock.
Yes.
We're not through all the questions. There is the scholarships at johnmonash.com email address on the screen that you can use. We'll try to cover off a few more. I can hang around for a few more minutes to answer questions, but if people need to go and we haven't got to your question, please send it there, but we'll keep going in the meantime.
Yeah, and
Um,
don't forget as well that second webinar in a few weeks' time is a dedicated Q&A session as well, so we can answer a lot more questions if we don't get to you tonight.
Yeah, so definitely look at the application before then.
Yeah.
Sabrina asks, what do you consider as academic excellence? Is there a minimum requirement? For example, is the scholarship only for people with first class honours, or could someone with an H2A, so upper second class honours, also be accepted?
We don't advertise that there is a minimum GPA or other measure. However, a lot of candidates are applying for these high profile universities that have a very high GPA. So if you get this scholarship, but then you don't meet the threshold to get into, I don't know, the University of Oxford is an example, because I know the entry requirements are quite high, then you're not going to be able to attend that program or university that you wanted to. So we don't prescribe it necessarily, and that's because candidates can go anywhere, which may have varying eligibility requirements, but you need to be sure that your academic background meets the entry requirements of the study that you are proposing.
Ella asks, I've noticed the application portal requires a WAM, which is a weighted average mean, but my university provides a GPA scored between 1 and 7. Do I need to find our raw scores and convert them to a WAM?
Yes, so there is in the application form, I think there's a link to a generic calculator. If you're not able to, if you could just give the overall requirement of the whatever value your university provides scores in, that is fine. However, I believe the link that we provided should give you mechanisms to convert most grading schemes used at Australian universities.
And Max has followed on to that, saying, noticing that that Monash University WAM calculator that we've linked people to gives a lower weighting to the first year courses. Should we calculate our WAM accordingly or use the convention of our own university? No, we want you to use that because we're trying to standardize the WAMs across. We know all universities do it differently, which is why we're trying to standardize it, which is why we've picked one university's calculator. And the reason that the first year is weighted lower, on average, students don't do as well in first year as they do in second and subsequent years. So it's usually to your advantage to have first year with a half weighting. So that's why we've chosen that one. So yes, please use that calculator, not if your university uses a weighted average mean calculated in a different way, don't use that one. Please use the one that we've directed you to. Um, another question about personal references. Is it personal reference necessary or just something to add if you're lacking other reference types?
Um, I mean, it's not necessary, but it is really about, okay, you have three choices. Who are the people in your life in various areas, academic, professional, personal, that are going to speak to who you are as a person, the things you've achieved, how you perform in leadership, all that sort of stuff. So it's not necessary if you don't feel that you have a good choice of personal reference. It is treated as a holistic three referees, and who are the best three people in your life that will be of the most support to your application.
Lynn asked, will there be another session before the interview stage, further detailing the interview process?
Um, Good question. So, when you are invited to interview, that is via email, and the email goes into a bit more depth about what the interview process will be, how long you're given, and who your panel will be as well. So, we'll be providing their bios to you so you can look them up in advance of your interview. Apart from that, though, there is not a dedicated session or how to. And it really, that first round is a lot about what you've written in your application, that panel getting to know you. In between the first round and the second round, I will be calling you to do a one-on-one session. I'll be giving you feedback from that first round, and helping you with preparing for your second round because they are slightly different interview formats, and you do actually have to prepare and bring some materials with you for that second interview. But I will be taking you through that if you are invited to national interview.
I've got a few more to go. When listing the degrees in the portal, if you have a double degree, should the WAM be listed separately or individually or combined for the degree?
A double degree would be a combined WAM.
Yeah, one because it's on one transcript. So I'd say, yeah, this wouldn't be a place I don't think to put two WAMs. So just yeah, it's on one transcript, so calculate one weighted average mean for that.
Yeah. And also, I'd just say as well, don't feel that writing that WAM means that no one's going to open your transcript and look at it for themselves. It's really just a field to give us some extra data. It does not mean that we will not look at those documents for yourself. So if you're worried about and you're asking those questions because you feel that one might reflect you better than the other, it's really much of a muchness. We will still be looking at your application in full. Don't worry.
A question about do you need to submit transcripts where you've not completed a program but transferred to a different institution? when someone's transferring
Um,
mid-degree?
Yeah, so if you have credit from another program, look, I wouldn't list that other program as its own item unless you don't have more than 4 degrees and you have space. But you might want to include the transcript from that first place when you are uploading the transcript for that final conferred degree to just state that that's where your credit has come from.
Okay. There's another question about academic excellence. That do we need honours? I think we've answered that. It's not. We aren't looking for a specific mark, but you will need high marks to get into some of these universities. How do you demonstrate leadership on your application?
Um, It's a good question. I mean, there are a few questions in the form itself that will allow you to expand upon that. Some of it will be asking, what challenges have you overcome where you've maybe demonstrated leadership? Or what your outlook is on leadership or your personal idea of what leadership is. There's many different ways to demonstrate it or demonstrate your personal brand or style of leadership. That should be regardless of whether you have acted in a leadership position or not. I think, or the foundation thinks that leadership can come in many forms and can be demonstrated in many forms. And I hope that the questions in the application allow you to expand upon that.
Yeah, and I'll go back to my comment earlier about relative to opportunities. So, someone that's been in the workforce for a few years might be leading a team, for example, at work. That's easiest to demonstrate, but we will look at relative to opportunity. So, if you haven't been in the workforce, we'll look for those other terms of leadership. Maybe you've led in a sporting team, in a community activity. It can be lots of ways you can do it. Um,
Sorry, I'll just jump in there. I might have to jump off now
okay.
because we have hit 7. But I think if we haven't answered your question and you would like to email it through, you can use that email address. But also, there is a second opportunity for you to ask questions at our second webinar in early June. So if you'd like to hold on, have a look through the application form, have a go at some questions, and then maybe the question that you ask in June is slightly different. But we appreciate everyone who came tonight. And as I said, this session has been recorded and will be circulated shortly. And yeah, please feel free to reach out to us if there's anything that we haven't covered in this first session.